Hey there, Fright Night friends. Welcome back to another episode of Scary Movie Fright Night. For you, it's probably been one short week, but for Sam and I, we haven't talked in like 2 weeks. He's been on travel. He's been sick. I've been sitting on the couch a lot. But we're back in the studio to talk about high life.
High
I put it in
life.
my notes as high rise. That's not right.
That's not right. I know. I realized after we finished the last episode that there was one called Life and another one called High Life. I was like, don't get them
Yeah.
mixed up and watch the wrong movie on accident. But so we both watched the correct movie, High Life.
High life. We hope we did. Not about marijuana, not about Miller High Life. Surprise, surprise. I have no idea what Sam's going to think about this movie.
We haven't talked about it
I have like one word. Strange.
This is
Scary Movie Fright Night, a new podcast about two guys who just watch scary movies. I'm Chris, and I love scary movies.
And I'm Sam, and I hate scary movies.
my body just shook. Give me the heebie-jeebies.
No, don't. All you have to do is stay inside in your bed, and then you won't get murdered.
Okay. And now you have that recorded.
So here we are, High Life, starring Robert Pattinson. Interesting space horror movie, and we'll talk a little bit more about our thoughts on that and the horror genre and where it fits in with what we've watched before. I normally make a list of characters. Honestly, I didn't know anyone's name except for the daughters.
I didn't either.
Willow.
I was like, who are these people?
I made notes. I said Willow, daughter, everyone else, who the hell knows?
Yeah,
That's literally what my notes say. So let's kick it off. Sam, thoughts on High Life?
All right, so your one word was strange. My one word is dark. This movie was dark and depressing.
Yeah.
Like, I think once we get into the meaning of everything, it's just, I felt like really heavy.
It was heavy.
Yeah.
Kind of like, gravity as you approach a black hole.
That's exactly what it was like. I watched this movie alone on an airplane. Well, I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by strangers, but I wasn't flying with anybody who I knew, is what I'm trying to say. Crossing the Pacific. So long flight, and watching it on my phone. And there's some scenes in this movie that, like, I was kind of looking around, looking over my shoulder, like, can anybody else see my phone? Because
100%.
It's a little uncomfortable, right? There's the sex scene and the sex chamber thing.
Chamber, yeah.
Yeah, there's some triggering things, right? There's some sexual abuse, like stuff that's very hard to watch. I was very squirmy. In public. Yeah, I was like trying to put my elbow like over my phone, so nobody else could see. So they're like, what is this guy watching?
So that was probably never provided in-flight entertainment for this movie.
No, I don't think at all. But I was kind of, there were the parallels of like, okay, there's these, so all the characters in the movie are like convicted murderers. And they're just traveling on this like very unsexy spaceship through space on a destination to nowhere with a mission.
Unaerodynamic spaceship.
Yeah, it was like a fucking just rectangle,
like
a bread box,
which
I think was probably an intentional choice. They're like, we're just slapping together the ugliest looking thing, and we're putting a bunch of ex-cons in there, and we're just launching them into space.
Yep.
That is what the movie was about. Yeah. If you didn't watch it, that is it. What did you think?
Well, what did I think? That's a loaded question. Well, continuing what you said, right? So yeah, it's this weird thing where they were all in, prison of some sort, right? And they had the opportunity to do something outside of prison for science. What they were actually trying to capture and how that data was ever going to get back to Earth in any sort of a timely manner. That a little bit of a plot hole maybe. But then they go out to outer space, right? And they're on this weird cube of a spaceship with some thrusters on the back. I would like to see how that actually took off from a planet. It's fine. And they're out there, in the outer reach of the black hole, and apparently because they're traveling so fast, there's natural gravity, which I feel like they fall back on the unknowns of being inside a black hole, which we could both try to like dig in and see how accurate that was. But sure, we could we'll say it's believable as they're in a black hole maybe there's some form of gravity that's created because of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they're all there, and I don't understand really where the baby testing comes in. Like, oh, let's see if babies can be made in outer space, or like the woman was also a convicted
Yep.
murderer, right? Because she killed
Yep.
her family. The doctor,
Yeah.
which I don't know her name either, Doctor So and So.
I don't remember.
And so maybe she's just running these tests. Like who's in charge? I don't know. Like
Right.
there's a pilot in there too that's supposed to fly the little machine, but you never really know. Well, there was a captain. So there was a captain, and then he had the insert in his finger.
Yep.
And when he died of illness, she that's when they cut the finger insert out, and that's when she kind of, I guess, became in charge.
Wait,
So
explain
she was doing
what
those
the
experiments.
explain what the insert did, because that was kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, so like this little, insert in his finger that allows him to log in to the system every 24 hours so that they can report back. And it's not really report back. I think it's report to the ship, right? Because I don't think those transmissions are necessarily, they can't be instantaneously making it back to Earth. So we're
Right.
talking about report to the ship, some sort of probably AI, right? Some sort of like internal AI system that you make a report based on the ID of the finger metal thing, right? And once they make the report, then it allows their oxygen and stuff to stay on for another 24 hours.
Right. So if they hadn't logged a report, then they would lose all like life-saving conditions or whatever, oxygen,
Right.
whatever. It would all shut down. So they had to
Yeah.
report in every 24 hours.
Which is, there's so many questions that I have that no one will ever answer probably. But like the dog ship, who was reporting in on the dog ship? And also, if they were all being sucked into the black hole, how did the dog ship like go in a different direction? And then they boarded the dog ship and there were dogs, but there weren't humans. It's super weird. So like that part, I don't understand. Like surely there had to have been a human on the dog ship, but why were they sending dogs out to the black hole?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Then okay. So there was a sentence in the New Yorker that I think summarizes this perfectly. They said, "High life induces information hunger because of the
Yes.
static way in which it drops its bits of narrative and bits of background together." So the whole movie, for typical like Hollywood blockbuster movie, you go in and you get the background of the characters. They feed you the plot. They give you the details of the narrative. So like in my mind, because this is a space movie, I was comparing it to a movie which I love, which is Interstellar. Now in Interstellar,
which is very different movie,
totally different.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting them to be the same, but in a situation like Interstellar, they give you the whole history of like what's happened to the planet, how has it gotten to where it is, then who are these characters. Then they find the underground NASA laboratory, and they're given all of this new information about this mission where these brave astronauts went out to find a new home for humanity, and they haven't returned, and we're trying to get in touch with them and go out and find them. So they set the whole thing up, and then where our hero goes off and the team goes and they try to find the new home, whatever. Interstellar. Yeah. In this scenario, it was like, we don't know anything. We don't know who's in charge. Yeah. The people who are on the ship seem totally incompetent. Like
100%. Yeah.
The ship is very like kind of vague. Like we see the garden and we see their bedrooms and the hallway, but like, is there a bridge? Are they navigating somehow? How are they piloting this thing? They're just flying through space. Right. Like we have no idea. They're not communicating with Earth. Like the whole movie was
they're getting random weird transmissions from Earth that are super old.
But
some of them are
totally
on repeat.
irrelevant.
So maybe they're not coming from Earth. Like maybe they're just preloaded like cycle transmissions.
Yes. So the whole movie, I just question after question after question. That was the experience. It was like, what is happening? What are these people thinking?
Like one of the big questions, like what did Robert Pattinson's character do? They told us, right?
They did.
Like
he murdered someone.
He like killed his friend over a dog or something.
Yeah.
As a kid, though, right? Like that. Like they show clips of him walking the dog as a kid.
Right. So, and then you see him like pick up a rock. Although we see someone pick up a rock, and that's it. Like, right. They don't really explain how did he kill her, why did he kill her. Well, don't know.
But on that note, it's interesting though, right? Because they actually did a pretty good job in all the unknown and all the just not knowing who's what they did, where they're from, like, what all the details that we don't know, the hunger for information, as you put it, or, as that article put it. I think they did a good job of making him compelling in that, from early on, he's like, I'm not going to provide my sample. I'm just going to
Uh-huh.
do my thing. I'm kind of like here doing, just kind of surviving. And he's, hanging out with Andre 3000, who, obviously is another criminal, but he is more of a, he seemed more authentic
Yeah.
than the other characters. And so building the connection between those two characters made you kind of, even though Robert Pattinson wasn't perfect, his character wasn't perfect, whatever his name was. But it made you kind of want to follow his story in his imperfection, and you talked about like there's the sexual assault in the movie, but he, is effectively the hero in that situation. And so it kind of makes they kind of build him out to be the right character to kind of like take it through and be his perspective, but still without knowing everything. So it was pretty good job of keeping it compelling with him as a character. First of all, speaking of Andre 3000's character, it never really explained how he died. He just like laid down in the dirt and like gave up, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, the last transmission he got from his wife or whatever was just like basically whatever she had said was just hurtful and like, you were dead to me anyway or something. I don't remember what it was. But then he just lays down in the dirt and dies. Everyone else, they showed how they died, and most of it was pretty gruesome. I knew that Mia Goth's character was going to be the mom because they did a really good job right off the get-go of the baby having red hair. And so when they showed her, I was just like, And then the more and more as it went on and him not, providing sperm samples. And then I didn't know it was necessarily going to go down the way it did with that crazy doctor lady. So all the weird erotic like twistiness in this movie, like it was a kind of a big staple and through point of this movie was just the eroticism of, and the horniness in space. And like you said, the sex chamber and then the assaulting and then the doctor it was, that part was kind of all over the place and pretty disturbing.
It wasn't like sexy, like, ooh, that's hot. Like I wasn't thinking like,
right.
Ooh, where can I get one of those sex chambers? I was like,
no, I was actually a little scared of it.
Oh, this is weird. Yeah.
I was a little bit curious about the functionality of it, but
who would you say, or what would you say, who or what was the villain in this movie?
That's a good question. Like, who is the actual antagonist? I think that
stumped.
I'm stumped. No, I think that probably something about like time, but not time. More like the emptiness that is coming, right? And it's kind of, we talked about it a little bit last episode when I imagined what this would be like, as far as a horror movie goes.
Yeah.
So and I kind of guessed it last week is what I thought this movie would be, right? Is like the ever elongation of time as you're drifting into a black hole that could go on forever and ever and ever. And so I think that part of just being out there alone, never going home, like I think that's the antagonist. Like that's what drives people a little bit crazy. Like that's why it's dark. That's why Aemon Targaryen, did you realize that the douchebag was Sapphire Eye himself?
I didn't realize. I was like, I recognize this guy. I know that little grin, but I had to Google. I didn't realize it until I Googled him.
I figured it out. I'm pretty good with with the facial recognition stuff. It took me a minute, but I was like, but the same sleazy face. I was like, no wonder they cast him because that dude is like, he just looks like an asshole.
Well,
I don't know why.
Maybe not in real life
like that. No, I'm sure, right?
But he has a way of like putting on like sort of an eerie, like creepy.
Yeah. Well, and that's why certain actors are really good at those roles because just with the way, they can turn it on and just, by the way we perceive their face, it may just allow them to, with obviously their ability to act it combined. Anyway, I was not sad when that dude died because he was a douche.
He was. Yeah. He was violent. I like that take though. I feel like all the other movies that we've watched so far, most scary movies, the whole thing that makes it scary is the premise of death. Like you don't know how much time you have. Something's coming for you and it's probably going to kill you. This movie was like the direct opposite of that. It's like you're just hurtling through space for an unknown amount of time. Seemed like they didn't have any constraints on like resources. There were no aliens. It was just they were just there together,
Yeah.
waiting, and there was no. I mean, there was a mission, but it seemed like it was kind of a false mission. Like there was
Yeah.
no clarity until if they get the
Well, and
information they get, like, are they ever going to go home? Like, it just seemed like
I
they're
guess
just
not.
off in space waiting to die, you know?
Yeah.
That's
My painting
why
statement from
for me it was so dark and hopeless. And
Yeah.
like
And I guess
with Interstellar, at least they're communicating with people back home, and it's sad because of the whole time difference
right.
thing, and he loses out on his daughter's life or whatever. But there's a return at the end, so there was
Right.
always some hope. There was some hope that they would be able to continue, humanity and return to their family,
Yeah.
whatever. But this movie was just hopeless. There was nothing
It
for
was
them
just
to live
hopeless.
for. There was no
It was hopeless from
end
the
goal.
beginning.
Right.
which kind of plays into like, everyone's kind of depressed in their own thing, and you can't really expect people to stay sane, even if they were all a little bit, darker of beings, human beings, based on what they'd done in the past. They were already going to get into this situation and probably going to lose their mind over time, because it's a hopeless situation.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the mission. The mission was obviously to, like, I guess, go around the eye of the black hole and collect some data and send it back. But also, there's a reason they sent criminals, because it was pretty hopeless that it was ever going to work out. Yeah, and that's interesting. And I guess that's what makes it a horror movie, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of edge on your seat, but there was some disturbing pieces. A lot of it was just, it's like the dark nature of it as a whole, and this hopeless situation, I think, is what gets it into that like thriller / horror genre. So it's interesting. So A24 made this. Are you familiar much with A24?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Of course you are, right? So American Independent Entertainment Company, which I guess has only been around for 10 years, 2012. But, they're known for like hip indie movies, right? So this is kind of like dark hip indie movie. And obviously they did, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Huge fan.
Yeah. Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler. If you haven't seen it, it was probably one of Adam Sandler's best performances. And honestly, like, he doesn't do a lot of like dramatic non-comedy performances. And Ex Machina, Lady Bird, like A24, obviously, like, they do great work. And so this being from A24, I guess you can kind of go in and expect the unexpected and not really know what to expect. I think that's kind of where they, that's kind of what makes them, in that hip indie field, is that it's always going to be a little artsy, which usually means a little bit like vanguard, like avant-garde, and just a little bit outside what you would expect.
It seems like people either loved it or hated it. A lot of haters out there.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know that I felt one way or the other. I watched it. I don't think it's a rewatcher. We're jumping ahead a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to go back and watch it again. Not for some time. Maybe at some point I'll go back and watch it again, just because I was like, maybe there's some more I can pull out of it that I didn't catch the first time.
I was depressed afterwards. I was like, oh, this is so sad. And I was just like sitting there on the flight, like alone with my thoughts.
Oh God.
Like,
and nowhere to go. Like you couldn't even do anything to like boost your dopamine or anything. You're just like, oh, I'm just stuck here thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just sad. It just made me feel like depressed.
Well, and the way it ends too, right? Like it ends and again, this is just kind of the way it's just always been hopeless. Like he raises his daughter to like 14 or something by himself, effectively, since she was a toddler. That is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like they're just alone, and obviously provides her some sort of education because she understands some things and she can speak and whatnot. They go to the dog ship and they tie in some of that normal father-daughter stuff. She's like, oh, I really wanted a dog. And he's like, oh, but we can't, I'm sorry. Even though it was because they might've been diseased or whatever. Can't bring him on the ship. But like they played into that a little bit, like, and him just not really knowing what he's doing, but they're just kind of living it. But then at some point, at the very end, her and her, like, pre-teen years or teen years, I guess 14-ish we'll say. I don't know if they actually say that, but I feel like that's about, I do think that by year, it had been about 14 years since she was born, give or take. And then they just decide they're done and they're gonna fly into the black hole. Yeah. I I noticed I picked this up and I verified it, but at one point when they were giving their report, it said something about like 76,864 days.
Yes.
And so I looked at that and I was like, well, how many
How many
like,
years
is that
is
how
that?
many days they were on the ship? So that's how many Earth days
Right.
they were out.
Right.
So 210 years on Earth had passed by since they'd been there.
Right.
So effectively, you know, that's when they're talking to Andre 3000, they're like, well, your family's all dead. Like you did this for your family, but they're all long gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They'd been out there for 210 Earth days and then 18 years like of their days, right? In their cycle. Which I think aligns with her being about 14. But then after all that, they're just like, well, I'm ready if you're ready. You know, you again, in a normal movie, you kind of expect, oh, the life support is going off because of a system malfunction. Well, I guess we're just gonna go ahead and fly into the black hole. But they just did it.
They just did it.
They just did it. I feel like our energy this episode like matches the energy of the movie we watched because it's just kind of like
it's so yeah. I mean, it really is. Yeah. I guess one little teeny tiny glimmer of positivity was that when they went into the black hole together.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the film doesn't show us, like, they showed us the very first pilot, and that was one of the most disturbing parts of the movie, I thought, was when she first flies into the black hole and you slowly see her like.
Well, she's supposed to be flying around it, right? But she like misses the mark because she's not a pilot. She killed the pilot and then stole the ship or whatever.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Mia Goth's character.
I like missed that whole point. But yeah, I mean, so you watch her just getting like ripped to pieces like inside the black hole, and that was pretty gnarly. I was like, ugh. So they didn't show that for the final two characters, Monty and the daughter.
Yeah.
And the daughter,
Monty, is that his name? Oh, good job.
Yeah, it just came to me. But the daughter was obviously not alive when the first pilot, or maybe she was a baby, I don't remember, when the first pilot flies to the black hole. So she doesn't actually know, presumably, unless the father's explained to her what happened. She maybe thinks like, oh, we're going to fulfill our mission. We're just going to do our thing. Like,
maybe he's just like, she doesn't understand what's going to happen.
Yeah. Maybe she'll just kind of die quickly, not knowing what's happening.
Well, and they're going into the eye of it versus trying to go around. Also, she had to have been alive because it was her mom that flew into it.
Oh, it was her. See, that's the thing about this movie is I was always like, which character is
who did what? Yeah. Well, and again, a lot happens off screen, right? So like the pilot's going to get in the thing, and then all of a sudden it's Mia Goth, and they're like, "Oh, well, where's the pilot?"
They don't
and they find the pilot. So
your suspicions, you
have to draw the connections yourself along the way, which is probably why it'd be interesting to go back and watch it again.
Also, I was watching it on this, so this is how much real estate I had. So there were a couple scenes where I was like, I almost wish I was watching this on the big screen so that I could take it in a little bit better because I might be missing some details here. It was like dark and.
It was just as dark on the big screen.
Yeah.
So speaking of, I know you usually bring, some research into this, but I love black holes. I don't really know why.
Wow. That's not something you hear very often.
Okay. I knew you were. I almost said something about.
Tell me how much you
love
black holes, Chris.
Okay, we're done. I'm logging out. See you later.
No,
just kidding. But. So to talk about favorite parts, I think my favorite parts are anytime they showed a visual of the black hole. I think black holes are so mesmerizing. I think outer space is mesmerizing to me. We've talked about this where, the idea of floating out in outer space or being able to go to space is like something that is just, to me, amazing to think like that you would be outside what is Earth, right? And then even just to be just outside of Earth and looking back upon, I think when I was younger and maybe a little more indie. I remember one time when I used to stay up late when I was young. Like I remember one time I was walking around Seattle with a friend, and she worked at a coffee shop, and so she had got off work, and we went to like some like late night like diner, and we were just like hanging out late night because apparently when you're young you have that kind of energy. But we were walking around downtown Seattle, and there's like this art park and whatnot. And I looked up at this like really big building, and it was like an apartment building, and some lights are on and some lights are off. And in that moment, you're like, there's like 400 people in this building living 400 different lives. Maybe sometimes they interact, maybe they don't. Like, and that's just a small fraction, right? So when you think of the world like that, you think the different countries and different cultures, and every single person has the things that are like affecting them day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and their thoughts and their hopes and their dreams, and then their 80, 90, whatever years on Earth, that's just a glimmer of, all that, we are small
Mm.
thoughts and mentality. And then to think about it from an outer space perspective, of to look back on this like one little piece of space that's holding all these people, all that energy, all that love, all that hate, all that like discontent, et cetera. And so like that's why I've always been mesmerized with space. So my favorite part were like the visuals of the black hole, which is not where I actually was going.
I was like,
What I was going to
what's
say
the
is,
connection?
yeah, the ending scene. So I kind of looked it up,
Yeah.
right? Because I talked about as you go into black hole and time slows and whatnot, but I just did a quick Google, and so on black hole science, right? This is from Union University, about like what happens when something goes into a black hole.
Okay.
It basically just said when matter falls into or comes closer than the event horizon of a black hole, it becomes isolated from the rest of space-time. It can never leave that region. For all practical purposes, the matter has disappeared from the universe. Once inside the black hole's event horizon, matter will be torn apart into its smallest subatomic components and eventually be squeezed into the singularity. As the singularity accumulates more and more matter, the size of the black hole's event horizon increases proportionally. Which I feel like that's like the end of the movie. They fall in and they just like, it kind of, everything just goes dark, and they are no longer part of our space-time. And even if they're still alive or what's going on, if they're on something else, we can't see it. They're on the other side, whatever that means.
Do you think
Whether
they
they
are
feel
somewhere
anything,
else?
I don't know. I mean, probably, who knows? We don't know what's beyond, right? We don't know what's
Wow.
beyond our consciousness.
Yeah.
People have obviously thoughts and beliefs and stuff, but who knows? I hadn't really thought about it. It was just like they flew in, and then I think there was some light, and then it was like a TV turning off, like an old the old box TV where it just like poof, and it just goes out.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so it's interesting, and I think that's what they were getting at, but it's weird concept for a movie.
That's so weird. That is really interesting though, thinking about like being in space and being separated from all the rest of us here on the planet. I also was thinking that kind of an abstract thought. Let's see if I can articulate it without losing everybody or losing myself for that matter. But like we have this group of prisoners floating in this rocket ship through space, which is almost its own prison. It's like they didn't really leave prison. They just got put into a different prison. And they're just floating, and just kind of living their lives. And it made me think, like, was that the same thing as like what Earth is? Like, we're just on this rock, just like floating through space. Now, I want to caveat that by saying I don't think that life on Earth is like hopeless and pointless and like miserable, like it was in the space prison. But it's kind of the same. Like, we're all just here living our lives. Like, yeah, we have little missions that we set ourselves, we create for ourselves. We create, objectives, and like there's things we do to survive and to grow and to thrive. But like we're all just on this rock, just floating through space, just like living our lives. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. No, it is. It's almost like it's a dark subset of just what we're doing. Time around us is relative. Really our time is what we're focused on, and the time of the rest of the universe is kind of irrelative to that. And generations pass and around us, right? People come and go, people's lives come and go, but we're on our own little ship, just
cruising.
Yeah.
Just floating through space.
I don't know.
This thing made me
I would
think.
Yeah, and I would love to talk to like the creators of this, because we could go super deep, conceptually, and try to come up with thoughts and stuff. And maybe that's part of the reason, you don't know enough to really have it tell you what it's thinking. Right. So it can make you kind of dig into that, which I think, again, A24, I think it is a factor in that. But who knows, maybe they purposely didn't even think about the answer to those questions. They just were like, I don't know the answer to that, so we're just not going to answer it, and let people figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It was a thought experiment. That's how I approached the movie, is just, what if this happened? How would things go? That's it. We're just kind of observing. We're just like watching these humans do sometimes they behave rationally, oftentimes they behave very irrationally, and a
Yeah.
lot of the violence can be hard to watch. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's dark.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
reading some of the reviews online, and there was some
Yeah.
pretty funny, pretty funny reactions. Because most people go to the movies, and if you're like a Marvel Cinematic Universe guy, you're expecting a very well defined plot line and a big hero and a big resolution to the story, and that was not in this movie. So if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, you're going to be so disappointed. Some of the captions, I copied some of these because they're pretty funny. Somebody said, low, lower, high life. Somebody else wrote, if you enjoy life, don't waste any time on this rubbish.
That's funny.
Someone else said, another black hole film. Like, how many black hole films are there and have you seen?
Interesting.
High life, mediocre film at best. And then my favorite was, I'd rather jump into a black hole
Oh, wow.
than watch this movie. So yeah, not a fan favorite, I don't think.
Yeah, but it got a high Rotten Tomato score, which again, critics versus critics versus
black hole enthusiasts.
Rotten Tomatoes, black hole enthusiasts, Metacritic, who knows?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, I feel like we've dove into the darkness of a black hole for a bit now.
Can we emerge?
And we emerged, or we're still in a black hole and no one will ever hear this, which be depressing. But so is there any part? So I mentioned my favorite part, were the scenes of the imagery of black holes. Did you have like a favorite part? There was probably plenty to choose from least favorite, but was there something about it that you really liked? And then also, obviously, what fear factor wise, we know it like made you feel bad, but what are your thoughts, scary wise?
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Favorite. There wasn't anything that I like enjoyed seeing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the sex chamber, I was like, ooh, a sex chamber, and then it got going, and I was like, I don't know about that. I was curious. So we see the female doctor use the sex box, whatever it's called.
Right. Yeah.
And then she exits, and then a gentleman was going in, and I was like, I wonder how they use it. I wonder what.
Yeah, I was a little
different
curious too.
Equipment, or are they using the same thing? I mean,
yeah,
questions?
It did not explain.
There was that information hunger I was experiencing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had any like. I'm trying to think favorite moments. Yeah, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
I don't think it's a favorite moment kind of movie.
No. I mean, I get your point about like the visuals of space and the black holes, or the black hole, but I didn't have anything that I was like drawn to, I guess.
I feel like they didn't want there to be a moment where you were like, oh, that was my favorite part of the movie, because that was just the theme was kind of the darkness of a black hole, and then you felt that darkness throughout every bit of the movie.
Like in other scary movies that we've watched, there are some like murders where you're like cheering on the villain, right?
Yeah.
Like when Megan kills the grumpy neighbor,
right?
Or was there any like exciting ones in Evil Dead Rise where you're like, yeah, I don't know.
No, less so.
Maybe when she like stabs her sister with the stick through the head, and you're like, oh shit.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. So there's like a positive energy towards that, even though it's like violent and whatever. Because of the scenario, they've set it up.
And
in
I think
a way.
they set it up to make it satisfying.
Yeah, it's
because
satisfying.
You're like the intensity comes in and it builds, and you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And then like blah, right? And then you're like, oh, that's how it. Okay, now it's also you're taking a minute to be relieved that the intensity is over, even sometimes if it's because of some doll murdering someone else, right? In something that obviously we wouldn't morally find right, but in the situation of the experience of the horror movie, which is why we're watching it, makes sense. But I think that this movie was not supposed to be satisfying.
No, there was no death where I was like, yeah. It was like, oh god, oh, that's gross. Oh, or like that's so sick and twisted. Or like, I mean, I was so uncomfortable during the assault scenes where I was like, I was like looking around the airplane, like I didn't want anybody to see what was on my phone. So
Yeah.
no favorites. But now this might surprise you. In terms of how scary it is. Now this is,
Yeah.
as you've named it, the Sam scary meter of scariness. So
Right. So
from my point of view, I would actually rate this one relatively high.
interesting.
Not because I think what was missing maybe is the adrenaline and
Right.
what we just described, that like in other movies there's like a buildup of tension and then like a release. In this one, what made it scary for me was that it called my beliefs into question. My beliefs that people are inherently good, that life is worth living, that there's always something, that there's always hope for something better.
Right.
And it was just so dark and depressing that the thoughts of experiencing this strange thought experiment were like, oh my God, that would be a terrible end of like rest of your life. Because it wasn't like he went on this mission and 6 months later it ended and he died. No, he they were flying through space for years and years and years. He had a whole parenthood with his daughter alone, just the two of them for like 15 years. That's crazy. It just is so depressing that I'm actually like the feelings of loneliness and like hopelessness, like that scares me. So I would give it like a 8.
Like an 8.
It's not it's not the coveted like 9 or 10 that we're searching for, but the psychological, the trauma of it freaked me out, and that is why I'm rating it high on my scary scale.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So that's satisfying for me. It's satisfying that we're, again, we kind of talked about it last week. Hopefully everyone's listened to the last episode, but Sam got him, you got yourself a little spun up with, oh my God, I got to find the scariest movie. Why am I not scared yet? But I feel like that would be boring if we just kind of went down a rabbit hole of scary movies for you, and we would end after one season, because you would get no choices, and I would just like, this is what you're watching next. But that's what makes this fun, is that like, I don't know, it didn't really scare. I don't think that I really had any horror feelings, but it definitely left that sense of dread and darkness and stuff.
Right.
But the way that it made you think about it, like it rated against the other ones.
Did you have any moments where like the adrenaline rush? Did you ever experience the intensity?
I don't think so. Feelings of discomfort, right? Obviously, like the assault scenes, some of that where you're just like, oh, those make you feel uncomfortable, but no real intensity. Again, it was kind of just like a slow burn of darkness in your soul. If I had to describe this movie.
When he was going on the dog ship, did you get a little nervous? Or were you like, nah?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, because you don't really know what's going to happen. Like, I'm expecting like some maybe crazy people to be on board, but it was just a bunch of dogs. He didn't even say, hey, what's up, dog? Sorry.
Missed
that would have been
opportunity.
good. Yeah, and then it would have been funny, and then it would have taken you out of the moment, and it would have ruined it.
And like, how depressed do you have to be to not take home a puppy? You're alone in space and you have got this whole spaceship full of dogs. Some are alive, some are dead, and you could just take one with you, and you're like, nah, I'm good.
No, I'm gonna leave them. It's fine. They're fine. They're fine.
Oh,
they probably would have ended up having to eat the dog anyway, and that would have been even more depressing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, see. So really, he'd probably better off. But anyway, so 8. So okay, so up there. That's interesting. But I wouldn't say surprising. I think the psychological stuff, probably the stuff that puts you in a unreal situation, but something that could be real, right? Like this could be a real situation. It's not supernatural.
It's like the uncanny valley. That's what makes it even scarier, I think, is like I can logic away, a monster or ghost coming for me. But like what we saw in this movie theoretically could happen, or like the thought of someone living a life that is like hopeless and lonely, that does happen. And so that is just, I'm like, oh, that scares me. I don't want a life alone.
Well, then final question before we move on to my favorite part is, do you recommend it?
No.
You're like, do not watch.
If you want to feel sad and depressed, then sure. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think most people will enjoy this movie. I don't think it's meant to
True.
be like an audience fan favorite. I think
Yeah.
if you are really into interesting films and you like the idea of a thought experiment and just
Yep.
sitting, I mean, like you said, it's slow. And if you're comfortable like sitting in that discomfort and exploring what the film's trying to tell us, then go for it. But I think, most your average moviegoer is going to be like, what am I
Yeah.
doing here alone in space?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
I
would
would say no.
say, I would say for Team Chris or Team whoever's listening, if you like indie movies and you like a movie that is very artsy, which means, like artsy indie, meaning it takes some things, the discomfort to the extreme. There's moments where they cut the screen to where it's a square and it's looking grainy like a videotape. The way there's a little bit of score in the background, the way that it's, that avant-garde feeling. If you're into that and you want that experience, sure. Maybe put it on your watch list. I would even say there's probably better movies out there to watch if that's what you're going for. I don't have a running list, standing by, but if you're looking for a horror movie experience or a space horror or space thriller or isolation horror, I would also say probably no. I don't need to watch it again. I have questions that are unanswered, but it's not going to make me watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I concur.
Yeah. Nice.
So high life for the loss. I'm just kidding. But on a good note, black holes are cool, and we got an 8 out of 10 from Sam.
And we escaped the black hole. We emerged.
And we escaped the black hole together.
We're returning home for another episode and a new theme.
And a new theme this week. So I'm very excited. I think that it actually worked out really well, not on purpose, because I kind of have some of these themes mapped out. But we're going into a theme that is guaranteed, I think, to deliver. And what I mean by that is, I don't know. I'm not expecting like an 8 out of 10 this week. I'm not expecting it to be, I don't know, some state of the art like horror movie something. But I think it's guaranteed to deliver. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to watch whichever movie you pick because I haven't seen these movies in a long time. But they also set the baseline for what we consider modern slasher films. So the theme for this week
is it Amazon
Prime? The theme
Prime?
for this week is Amazon Prime.
Is it FedEx?
No.
Is it
it's
US
not
Postal
FedEx.
Service?
Wait, I'm really confused.
You said it was guaranteed to deliver.
That was a really late comeback.
I was waiting.
Guaranteed to deliver, free shipping on Amazon Prime. Anyway,
UPS.
no. Okay. The theme for this week is classic 80s slasher films.
80s! That's when I was born.
Yeah.
Barely.
These are the movies that started it all. And honestly, as a kid, like these are the movies I remember. Now, I will say, caveat, one of these movies actually came out in 1978. But
Christopher,
it's part of what would be considered classic 80s slasher films. They started it all.
We can just round up. 78.
We're
round
rounding
up to 1980.
Yeah.
It's fine.
If it were 74, you'd round down.
People were probably still watching it in the early 80s.
People were definitely watching it.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
I will say every one of these movies, and you'll find out soon. I mean, you can probably guess what a couple of them are, but every one of these movies have been remade over and over again or have sequels coming out over and over. And we'll talk about those individually as we get to each one. And I think most of our listeners, definitely the Team Chris listeners, are going to know these movies. The Team Sam ones will probably have heard of them, but I doubt we'll have seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're bringing back some blood and some gore.
Bringing back a little bit of blood and gore. And are you sitting on the edge of your seat yet since I haven't told you what we're watching?
Yeah.
And every single one of these has an A-list actor in it, but back in like early 80s. Oh, every single one.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting. All right. So the first one, these are in no particular order.
Okay.
I probably should have put them in like order of when they came out. They're in reverse order of when they came out on purpose. Not really. So the first movie on this week's theme of classic 80s slasher films is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
With our friend Freddy Krueger. Came out in 1984. Stars Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself, Heather Langenkamp, and Johnny Depp.
I didn't know Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
So I knew, but honestly, I completely forgot. So, yeah. So there's our A-lister for round one.
Okay.
And For those that don't know what this movie is about, here's a synopsis.
Thank you.
Several Midwestern teenagers fall prey to Freddy Krueger, a disfigured midnight mingler who preys on the teenagers in their dreams, which in turn kills them in reality. After investigating the phenomenon, Nancy begins to suspect that a dark secret kept by her and her friend's parents may be the key to unraveling the mystery. But can Nancy and her boyfriend Glenn solve the puzzle before it's too late? Watch this week on Our Friend Freddy Krueger. Anyway, that's a synopsis. Oh, man. That was hard to read. For our listeners, I read that 7 times and I couldn't say it. I fumbled it up every time. But
sounds like your friend Freddy Krueger is like really getting in your head.
It's true. It's true. We go way back, me and Freddy.
We have. Yeah. So we established that.
Me and the Krugmeister.
You and the Krugs.
Yeah.
Chris, call me crazy, but I feel like, thank you. These movie synopses are all about like death and murder and dying, but this music that you're playing makes it sound like they're just like joyful family style movies, and I can't help but think that you might be manipulating me to get to watch these movies with you.
Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure that the first movie you were like, oh, this movie was so thoughtful. It was great. I mean, I understand he has a hook and he kills people, but it's thoughtful. And then there was another movie and you're like, oh, the Megan dance is great. That's family fun. And they even cut the scenes out of Megan to make it more family friendly. So
whatever you're doing,
High Life was
working.
like, hey, if you have to raise a kid, best to do it on the way to a black hole.
The garden. In the
garden.
Space garden.
And the squared spaceship.
Yeah. Well, okay, so he's torturing them in their nightmares, but then
he kills them. He preys on them in their dreams, yeah.
And then somehow they also die in real life. It's giving Stranger Things.
If they die in their dreams, then they die in real life, yeah.
Why don't they just wake up? That's what I do when I feel like I'm about to die in my dream. I'm like, wake up.
Well, you'll have to watch the movie. That's the problem. Because sometimes I will say they want to wake up, but they can't figure out how to wake themselves up.
Oh, that's scary.
That is scary.
That is a real thing. Sleep paralysis. Have you heard about this? People who are like they know that they're sleeping and but they can't wake themselves up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like cataplexy. My mom has cataplexy. That's very similar.
Oh.
It's like comes with like vivid dreams and or hallucinations in like a kind of a paralyzed sleep state. Yeah.
Wow, that is kind of scary, huh? I wonder what the secret that the parents have. What did it say that might be the key to unlocking the mystery?
Yeah, it's a dark secret kept by her and her friend's parents.
Are they the ones who
might be the key to unraveling the mystery?
They're the ones who...
I always love a good mystery.
I bet they...
fun-loving family movie about just a girl who has aspirations to be a detective and unravel the mystery. Solve the puzzle.
Here's my hypothesis, is that they're the ones who did something to poor Freddy. That's why he's all disfigured. And they know what hurt his feelings and why he's being a bully.
Yeah. Sometimes the bullied become a bully.
Right? Yeah. It's probably the parents'
fault. I mean, I'm not going to say one way or the other. I'm just going to pretend I don't know.
That's my hypothesis.
Well, we'll talk more about it.
Okay.
We'll talk about, how many movies there are and stuff. But first, let's get to the second movie. Another movie, 1980s thriller, slasher film. This one is called Friday the 13th, which came out in 1980, starring Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, and none other than Kevin Bacon. Footloose. He dances so much in this movie. I'm just kidding. Not true. But if you want to know what it's about, I'm about to tell you. Here we go. Crystal Lake's history of murder doesn't deter counselors from setting up a summer camp in the woodsy area. Superstitious locals warn against it, but the fresh-faced young people, Jack, Alice, Bill, Marcy, Ned, Sam, and Chris, pay little heed to the old-timers.
Wait a minute.
Then they find themselves stalked by a brutal killer. As they're slashed, shot, stabbed, the counselors struggle to stay alive against a merciless opponent.
Oh.
Yeah. Merciless opponent. It's basically a death match.
And this is all at summer camp, huh?
Summer camp. Crystal Lake.
Did you go to summer camp?
Never.
Oh.
I mean, I guess I went to like band camp where we went to like someplace in the woods and like practice, before the first football game of the year. One time at band camp.
One time at band camp. And many times at band camp. Okay, so this just sounds kind of straightforward. They're just at camp, and then a killer comes out of the woods and starts going
Yeah.
to town.
Killer comes out of the woods, goes to town.
Now
Merciless.
you've seen this one,
Yep.
and well, I guess I can't ask you what you thought of it, but because that will give away too much. But
They're all
if
pretty
you
classic.
were to, they're all big classics.
Yeah. They're the ones that set the standard moving forward.
Now, what's the name of the villain in this one?
I'm
See the
not going
name?
to tell you.
Oh, what?
So the villain of the Friday 13th movies is Jason.
Jason.
He's the one with the
Okay.
hockey mask, right?
Hockey mask.
Freddy
Jason.
Krueger is the one with the glove,
Yeah.
the blade head, the Wolverine. No, I'm just kidding. The glove.
Okay. I get them
and
all
I can do a
confused.
little. What's that? Yeah, and I can do
yeah.
a little cross comparison after we read the third synopsis.
Okay.
Give you a little better,
Okay.
choice.
Okay. So we've got Freddy. Now, this was my question. I forgot it, and then I remembered it. Is why did you choose Freddy to be your friend instead of Jason?
I just think it was based on the timing. Maybe I watched a Friday the 13th movie and it freaked me out.
You just picked him for. You just saw that one first, and you were like, okay, so that I don't get scared, I'm gonna make this guy my buddy.
Maybe. And also, what I will say is, you actually hear Freddy speak. You don't hear Jason speak. He does not speak.
Okay.
There's no verbal from Jason, right? So Freddy is a human being, or was a human being of some sort, right? All the while demented. And so I think that it's something you can actually interact with, whereas Jason would just be standing there and you could talk to him, but he wouldn't really talk back.
Okay.
He would just,
all right.
he would slash back. That doesn't make sense.
Flashback. What does he use to murder people with?
Really anything and everything, right? But you generally see like if people are dressing up as Jason for Halloween, it's probably like a machete. I think that's pretty common, like him carrying a machete around. But there's a bazillion of these movies and a bazillion Freddy movies, but at least Freddy has a glove, right? So Jason's gonna grab whatever he has available. But I think I think even like the movie poster probably has him holding a machete.
A machete. Okay. Huh.
That's
Does he
common.
like to garden, or maybe like clear trails in the woods for the
campers? Yeah, that's why he's
campers?
holding it. Yeah.
Okay.
He clears trails for the campers. If
He's like the
they get in
groundskeeper.
his way, though, he'll cut anything down, to include the camp counselors.
Just gotta stay off the trail, out of the way, boys and girls.
Oh, but think about like summer camp in the woods. I guarantee you, someone at some point is going to run through the forest and trip and fall.
And their clothes are gonna fall off.
No, the clothes will probably come off too, but they won't fall off when they trip. That'll be a different scene.
Oh, okay.
People, because again, we're in classic slasher film territory. People are gonna have sex, probably die
So
while
many
having
roots.
sex.
Yes.
And then also people are gonna run away and then fall. Maybe they're gonna run upstairs instead of downstairs. I mean, it's gonna be fun, kind of identifying some of those in here.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool.
But let's go ahead. We'll move on to the third and final movie of this week's theme. Man, I don't know which one I'm more excited for you to pick. I kind of wish we could just watch all three. But this third movie came out in 1978, and it's Halloween.
Oh.
Starring Nick Castle, Donald Pleasance, and none other than Jamie Lee Curtis. And again, if you guys don't know what this movie is about, here's a synopsis. In a cold Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally murdered his 17-year-old sister Judith. He was sentenced and locked away for 15 years. But on October 30th, 1978, while being transferred for a court date, a 21-year-old Michael Myers steals a car and escapes Smith's Grove. He returns to his quiet hometown of Haydenfield, Illinois, where he looks for his next victims.
What do you think his sister did to deserve that? Do you think she went into his room?
Yeah, I think she
stole
took
his
the last
stuff?
piece of bacon. They were having Sunday brunch, and he was like, "Oh, I'm hungry. Can I have that bacon?" And she was like, "No, you little twerp." And she ate the bacon. Yeah.
I just had bacon for brunch this morning.
Thanks for sharing.
I took the last
You
one.
took the last piece. Michael Myers is coming for you.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you're screwed.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I love Jamie Lee Curtis. She's great.
Yep. I mean, she's like the classic, the Scream movie, right? Like
Didn't
they
they
talk about
remake-
Halloween and they talk.
Don't they have 4 or 5 of those movies where she was the same character over the years?
So it's complicated, but yeah. So I'll break it down kind of just to give you a little bit of background. So we'll start at the beginning, right?
Okay.
So Nightmare on Elm Street. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movies, and then
Wow.
a new one that came out, all done by Wes Craven. We've talked a little bit about Wes
Oh,
Craven, right?
Wes.
Yeah,
Our friend Wes.
good old friend Wesy McCraven Pants.
All right.
So 6 original movies, and then Wes Craven's New Nightmare that came out in 1994. So this is between 84 and 94, a total of 7 movies, all with Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger, right? So it's all along the same storyline. They did do one remake with a new actor. To be honest, unmemorable. And I think that that's what makes Nightmare on Elm Street so hard to remake, is because Robert Englund was Freddy Krueger. He while his face is like all burned up and disfigured, it's hard to take and remake that storyline. Friday the 13th is Jason Voorhees. He wears a hockey mask. That is a lot easier to remake. So Friday the 13th movies, there's like 12 of them.
Wow.
What I would say is there's really like 8 or 9 of them. Then there's one where like it's like Jason X and he goes to outer space. It's probably not good. I don't even know if I watched it. Then at one point there was a crossover with Jason versus Freddy. Jason versus Freddy Krueger.
Okay. I have heard of
right.
that. Yeah.
And then there's a new series that's coming on one of the networks that's kind of like an origin story of Friday the 13th. And they have remade Friday the 13th. Rob Zombie did a couple Friday the 13th remakes. He also did a couple Halloween remakes. And so Friday the 13th, that's why it's classic, right? It started in 1980, and the latest Friday the 13th movie, I think, was in like 2009. I don't think I saw the Rob Zombie remake.
Wait. Rob Zombie?
Yeah.
Who is that?
He's like a singer.
His last name is Zombie?
I don't know if that's his real name, but that's what he goes by.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's a singer,
Rob
but
Zombie,
he's also a filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean, he is because he chose to be. So Rob Zombie, like, he's like a heavy metal singer. Yeah, so he's a heavy metal singer. He sung songs like that, like that Dragula song. Burn through the bridges and turns in the ditches and smash in your pisses, but Dracula. No, you know that
What?
song?
No, I have no idea what that is.
You really don't know? It was like on The Matrix. Like, I think that song played on The Matrix. Like, it was a very big song. It was like 1998.
Wait, can you sing it one more time and see if I remember?
No, I won't sing it another time. Here, look it up real quick.
A few moments later.
Yeah. Okay. So Sam just listened to it. He has no idea what the song is. He's never heard Dragula. It was in The Matrix. I think that there's probably people have put like military videos to that song. Now it's a 98 song, right? You were a little bit younger, I guess, but like, I'm super surprised you don't know what that song is. I'm not like a heavy metal listener, but like, Rob Zombie for a time was pretty well known, at least for that song. Surely there's other songs. For our listeners, leave a comment. Leave us a comment. Let us know other like famous Rob Zombie songs.
I can't be the only one out there who doesn't know.
No, I'm just kidding. You're probably not. You're probably right. But what I'll say is, at some point, Rob Zombie then shifted into making horror films. But what I will say is like demented horror films. Like, we probably, honestly, should
Is he on the
look.
list?
Oh God. Oh. Now I'm remembering some of his horror films. So first of all, I'll read. So in 2003, he came out with this movie called House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh.
That movie is, I watched it, and it's pretty demented, man. Like, it's, there are scenes in that movie that are just like, I mean, the gore factor is rough. And it is just demented. It shows that he has a pretty twisted mind, we'll say.
Yeah.
He also came out with a movie called The Devil's Rejects in 2005. And those were the two movies that kind of started him out on horror movies. And when we say horror, I mean like horrific movies. We should probably, I'll make a note. We're going to throw some of those in the list. Maybe we do a week of just like, I pick 3 Rob Zombie movies. I don't know. Yeah. Because I hadn't thought about that, but it's worth visiting. Anyway, all that to say, so those movies came out 2003, 2005. In 2007 and 2009, he did Halloween 1 and 2, right? So he did kind of a remake of Halloween, Michael Myers, which is, again, kind of easy to remake. The origin story is relatively simple, and he wears a mask. So all you need to do is put someone in that mask, and you can kind of do a retelling of the story. I don't know how popular those two were. I saw at least one of them. It was fine, but again, when you talk about the classics, John Carpenter did the original, and so John Carpenter's another big name in classic horror, and so that's why since Rob Zombie did that, we've had more of the actual classic movies come out. More Rob Zombie movies came out. He did a movie called The Munsters last year. Apparently, he did a remaking of The Munsters. Who knows what that looks like? Anyway, he has a list of movies. I'm going to add to the list. We're getting completely off track with Rob Zombie.
Okay. No, this is good. This is good. So Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th,
Yep.
and Halloween.
Yep. And so we talked about Nightmare on Elm Street. There's like 7 or 8 movies. There's a crossover with Jason. There's about 12 movies. Halloween is a little bit different because this one actually gets a little bit complicated. So John Carpenter started off with, I believe, only the first Halloween movie. Then the second one came out as a direct sequel. Both had Jamie Lee Curtis in it. Then the third movie came out in 82. So this is 1978, 81, 82. The third movie came out, and honestly, I never saw it, and it didn't have Michael Myers in it, and it's very confusing because it has nothing really to do with Michael Myers at all. Then the fourth one came out, back to Michael Myers, kind of continues on the story. It doesn't have Jamie Lee Curtis, but it still involves his family. Then 4, 5, 6 comes out, and then that was kind of the end of the original Halloween movies. Then in 1998, 20 years from the original, they came out with Halloween H2O, which was 20 years later, starring Jamie Lee Curtis as the same character she played in 1 and 2, but it's been 20 years later, following some of the same storylines that were brought to light in the second one, I will say. And I'm not going to go into it because no spoilers, right?
Okay.
Then a few years later, Halloween Resurrection came out in 2002. Then we talked about the couple ones that Rob Zombie did. Then in 2018, John Carpenter came back on board for a trilogy that were direct sequels to the first movie only, because he didn't even partake in the second movie. So there were certain pieces of information that were added to the story in the second one that written off, really. So if the first movie was the only one that happened with Jamie Lee Curtis and everything that takes place in that movie, this last trilogy in 2018, 21, and then last year in 22, that trilogy were direct sequels to the first movie. And that's why I say it's complicated, because depending on which one you watch or how you're watching it, it's not directly all tied together. You could watch 1 and 2. You could watch 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Or you could just watch 1, 2, and H2O. Yeah. Or you can just watch 1 and then the most 3 recent ones. But all that to say, right, it's another epic movie that they're still recently making movies. And the last trilogy, all 3 had Jamie Lee Curtis in it.
So these 3 storylines, these 3 movies make up if you strip away, this is like the most fundamental scary movie content out there. Everybody knows, slashers. Everybody knows Jason. Everybody knows Michael Myers. Everybody knows Freddy Krueger. Those are the core. And hearing you talk about all the remakes and the storylines and the sequels and the directors in it makes me think of the passion that people have for Star Wars, for example, and all the different storylines and the MCU gets so complicated, complex. You ask people to describe who's in which universe and which planet things come from, and then how all the storylines come together when there's crossovers, things like that. This is the horror. This is the horror cinematic universe, HCU. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So I'm glad that we're going into this territory, because I haven't seen any of these movies, and I think it's good education. You got to know who these 3 characters are, and whichever 2 I don't pick for this next episode, we still got to come back and revisit maybe next season or something, because I got to get
maybe we'll do a bonus episode for each one or something. Yeah, because they're all critical for your development into scary movies, I think, because they're all very different. Yeah. But they're all fundamental, they're the foundation.
Yeah. So it's hard to pick between all 3, because I feel like they're probably all similar, comparable, same time periods. I'm thinking same, production quality, probably same type of scariness. But I'm just going to pick one that I think is the most intriguing based on the synopsis.
Okay.
Which is the first one, Nightmare on Elm Street.
I'm so excited.
I want to know what the whole connection between their dreams or their nightmares and then what happens in reality. There's that metaphysical thing going on. And I want to know, I have dreams all the time. I wake up first thing in the morning and I replay my dreams. And then
I don't remember mine most of the time.
Oh, that's why you got to replay it right when you wake up. Be like, okay, what was happening? I did this, and then I went down the street, and then there was a weird,
and then Freddy Krueger was there.
Unicorn, and
we were having brunch.
And then I go pour coffee, and I'm like, Zach, I got to tell you about my dream. And I go detail by detail, and they never make sense. There's no beginning, middle, and end.
100%.
It's just I'll take some notes before our next episode, and I'll come retell one of my dreams or nightmares.
Yeah, that'll be
maybe.
fun. Ooh, that'll be good.
And
That'll be good themed with Freddy Krueger.
There you go. So that's the one that I'm picking, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. So I will tell you why I'm so excited. I haven't seen a Freddy Krueger movie in a long time. I've seen the newer Halloween movies, the Jason movies less so because they haven't made a new one in a while. But one thing to note about Freddy Krueger is that as Nightmare on Elm Street movies were made, they got campier and campier and more a little bit like, well, I mean, literally just campy. Like I remember one of them, it's like the fifth or something. There's a deaf guy. And so he has hearing aids in, but his hearing aids aren't in and he's completely deaf. And so like Freddy Krueger's creeping out behind him. But then at one point he's like kind of doing a little dance because he can just dance around behind him. And it's like, it's kind of campy, right? But what I will say is it didn't start out that way. The first movie, people remember that movie as being scary. Now we'll go back and we'll watch it. We'll see. Whereas Halloween has always been consistently scary. Nothing that Michael Myers has ever done has ever been comical. I don't think anything that Jason Voorhees has ever done has ever been comical. So you're starting in its purest form, baby Johnny Depp. So I'm excited. And it, you'll get to see who one of my youngest friends were when I was a child.
Our friend Freddy Krueger.
Which when you find out, when you find out the secret, you're gonna be like, this dude's demented. You should not have been friends with him. Yeah.
Well, it's a defense mechanism.
It is a defense mechanism.
And maybe you could change him for the better,
Maybe. Yeah.
Turn him from villain to caring, kind citizen.
Yeah. And Robert Englund, like he is Freddy Krueger, I don't know how they would ever be able to remake it, because he is that character. And I think that that's part of one of the things that makes that so unique is that the person acting it makes the character because of him being verbal and communicative, right? You could put anyone behind a mask and have them do the same thing that the other ones are doing. And then this adds that layer of in a dream state, things aren't real. What's real? Am I dreaming? Right? Am I dreaming or am I actually like that plays into it too, right? Like if you were to wake up in your bed and you get up and you go have coffee with Zach and you're like, hey, let me tell you about my dream. And then everything's happening and then something turns and you're like, wait a minute, am I in a dream? That's the type of stuff that this brings. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time.
Ooh, I can't wait.
I cannot wait either. So Fright Night friends, you know what to do. Find yourself a way to stream. Friday the 3rd. Nope. Man, why do I always say that? Because Freddy Krueger and Friday start with the same name. Same letters, words, letters, FR. Anyway, you know what to do. Find a way to stream Nightmare on Elm Street so that you can join us next episode as we talk about it. And Sam gets a little classic induction into classic slasher films.
That was me slashing.
That was you slashing. Well done. Well done. Next week, bring your knife-handed glove to the party. Maybe not. So thanks for hanging out while we talked about the darkest movie in the entire world that got sucked away into a black hole. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. We're at like 6 episodes in. Maybe you just have an alarm set so that you know when the episode drops. But subscribe,
guys. Just subscribe.
Subscribe. If you like classic 80s slasher films, leave us a 5-star review. Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening. And tell us what your favorite slasher film is. If you like Freddy more than Jason or Jason more than Freddy or Michael Myers versus all of them, let us know. And then also let us know what Rob Zombie movies we should watch for Team Chris out there. Team Sam's not going to know, but Team Chris,
clue, but
let us know because there's a few to pick from and I haven't seen the most recent ones. So, if you suggest one of the movies for us to watch and we pick it, we'll give you a shout out in the episode. So.
All right, everybody, don't get sucked into a black hole. We'll see you at the next episode. Do you want to do another? Do you want to do a? Was that the thing at the end, or do you want to do a different one? I was just saying that to like say goodbye.